Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Global Adventure Show with travel writer Debbie Stone. So very excited today because we are going to New York City where the Fire Monkey, we call her the Fire Monkey, Debbie Stone, travel writer Debbie Stone, is going to share 6 unique experiences. We're going to be talking about the arts. We're going to talk about parks, theater, immigration history, and guess what? Ice cream. Because who knew you need to go to New York City and actually go to a museum that is dedicated to one of my most favorite delicious treats in the world, ice cream. So welcome back, Debbie. How are you?
I'm very well. And yes, New York City has so many different sights and experiences. These are just a few. You could just, spend weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks exploring New York and finding wonderful, wonderful places to visit and different experiences. So it really is a treat for people who go to New York, even if you go often, because you can always find new things.
And New York City, I know you seem to be going like every year lately for the last couple of years. And I just want to touch on that. And everyone, just so you know, Debbie's got articles for each of these 6 experiences and destinations we're talking about, and the links are in the show notes because they're on different sites. And I'm excited to talk about all of these places and the experiences because you can even make your own ice cream. Like you can have your own ice cream name. I like this. But can you give us some pointers on going to New York City? Because I'm going to be honest, Nancy and I almost ended up driving into New York City because I got ourselves twirled around going from Connecticut to Michigan. How do you end up going downtown New York? Well, I'm apparently the one driving and GPSing. But I literally pulled off the road and just like, we're not going, because a little bit of panic ensued. It did. But then we did upstate New York, and you've been to some fabulous destinations, as you talked about in last month's episode, Lake Placid, Niagara Falls. We did Seneca Falls. I mean, it's just New York, the state of New York is beautiful, but a lot of people want to go to New York City. It's like one of the most iconic cities on the planet. But then there's like, I'm a little nervous. Like, should we drive in? Should we fly in? So any tips and pointers on the New
I
York
think,
City experience? Yeah.
well, first of all, nobody needs a car in New York City. Never, ever. There's no reason to have a car in New York City. So, whether you fly in or you take a train from somewhere, you don't need to deal with the car. The subway system is extensive and good. You can also, take any of the rideshare, companies and taxis. I mean, there's just a million ways to get around New York, and you don't, New York City, and you do not need a car. So, people, it's up to people's personal preference as to where they want to base themselves, but wherever you base yourself, you can get to wherever you want to go to in Manhattan. So to me, it's like it really doesn't matter unless you are so intent on, say, being in Times Square, or, being, near Bryant Park, or being whatever it is, or being in Chelsea, or, anywhere. I think it's anywhere I've been based in many different places in the city, and it really doesn't matter to me, because I can walk. I love walking in New York because it's fun, it's interesting. There's always something to see that's, it's just a very vibrant city with so much to offer, whatever you're into, whether it's the arts and history or whether it's food, which they have in so many,
wow.
Every other building you stop in, there's food everywhere. And, or whether you're interested in shopping or fashion or design or, architecture or whatever, it's got it all. And so, I tell people, if you're going for the first time, give yourself at least a couple of days to kind of, see some of the major sites that you might have heard about, whether it's going, to see the Statue of Liberty, or Ellis Island, or whether you, want to go see the 9/11 Museum, and, whatever it is that you want. But if you're going back there again, you can pick different parts of the city to explore. You can find different museums that you haven't been to. So to me, it's one of those places you can continually go back to and always find something new or different, or visit your favorites again.
I love this list of destinations too that you've been to over the couple years, just the recent 2 years. And I want to start with the Museum of Ice Cream because I remember when that story came in, I'm like, what? Because I just it wasn't what I thought of what would come out of New York, but it leads to the next, experience and destination is the Tenement Museum, but because the Museum of Ice Cream, it kind of reminds us that America is a melting pot like melted ice cream. But there's this map that you have that you took a photo of in the museum that shows ice cream around the world. And that kind of makes me think of New York City. I've always thought it was like this cultural hub of
Right.
cultures. I mean, this was the port, this is
Of
the
course.
area people came through. That whole East Coast area up there is, where we all came through. Obviously, other than Native Americans, right? And of course, Native Americans were there too first, right? But
Absolutely.
the ice cream, the immigration, I mean, and then the stories, the places. Just real quick, I want to tell people what we're going to talk about is the Museum of Ice Cream. We're going to talk about the Tenement Museum, the Museum of Broadway, which is pretty new, right? That's a new one. The
Yeah, it's
Museum of
about a year
Broadway.
old, I think. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. The Apollo Theater. We're also going to look at the New York Public Library's Schwartzman Building and the tour that you can take there. And then also the New York City High Line. And that's a park with nature, art. I mean, this is a whole thing. So those are the main places we're going to talk about on today's show. So let's start with ice cream because we all scream for ice cream. And I think we should, start, the day with ice cream. I think we should have it for breakfast, quite frankly. But tell it that did you expect that in New York City to have an ice cream museum?
Well, I'd heard about it, and the Museum of Ice Cream is now in Chicago. There's also one in Austin, Texas, and I believe there is one they expanded internationally with a location in Singapore as well.
Wow.
So it has become incredibly popular, and the fact that of course, New York has all these wonderful museums about everything possible you can think of, and there is even one on ice cream. And it's interesting because yes, it's tasty, of course, because you're going to, get to sample all different types of ice cream, but it's also it's very innovative. It's it's an experiential art installation museum with all sorts of really interesting information. I mean, there's a lot of history when it comes to ice cream. And this building, there's like 3 floors. It's 20,000 square feet. It's you're going to learn all these fun facts about ice cream. When the birth of ice cream. And then when it came to when it was in America, and then when did the cone get going, and when the invention of the ice cream bar, and then there's a wonderful map there that that gives you your attention to around the world where ice cream is, the different types of ice cream that are popular, whether it's gelato, in Italy, or whether it's hokey pokey in New Zealand, or, whether it's a type of ice cream in the Philippines. And then you're going to learn that, of all these countries, who buys the most ice cream? That's China, followed by us and Japan. But in terms of consumption per capita, New Zealand has taken the lead there, then us, the United States, then Australia, Finland, and Sweden. And then you're going to learn how much does the average American eat, and it's 20 quarts of ice cream per year.
Well, now, okay, so but this is the most important thing. You have your own ice cream from your experience there. That Devin Dots.
Yeah. Yes. Well, the thing is they want you to give yourselves an ice cream related name, like a badge that you create to wear during your tour. So, all these celebrities have them, whether it's Oprah Winfrey's or George Clooney, Katy Perry, Dwayne The Rocky Road Johnson. So, I became Devin Dots, and my son, whose name is Jake, became Joke-a-Lot or something, and his wife Bree was Brianna Split. So you can create your own ice cream name, which is really, really fun. And then of course you can eat. So you've got cones, soft serve. You've got scoops of ice cream. You've got a donut hole with it's just there's endless amount of treats that you can have. So yes, it is definitely a sugar rush.
Well, this is look, we all like sweet treats. That's a big deal.
Of
But I love
course.
this global connection and then getting to
Yeah.
do your own because it inspires creativity and figuring out who you are. So there's like a lot of things going on in this museum and it looks super fun for all ages.
Yes.
But now I want to move over to the Tenement Museum in New York City because, I mean, think of it, we've all gone through the holiday season, which is a big time in, interviewing your elders and people in your family and getting your family history, research going. And it's, genealogy is one of the biggest hobbies in our country, if not around the world. And
Right.
I think this is a museum that will be important for people to visit, but also honors like the people coming in to understand their stories. It's relevant politically, even, just saying, because it is.
Right.
We have so many people, moving around the world, immigrating, emigrating, all of it. Um, but it wasn't easy back then. It's not an airplane, and it's not easy now either. But you've
Yeah.
got to think about people getting on those boats, those ships. Come on, that was not easy coming over. But this museum is definitely one that I would really, really like to go to. So, um, is it, when you think about the Tenement Museum, is it as much as you like emotionally? It's got to be
Well, it's
like
fascinating because
yeah.
I'd like to go. I'd like to go back because they offer several different tours. Tours where you're going to step into communities and you're going to visit tenement apartments of certain families that live there. And I chose. I think it was. A family. It was, I think it was called At Home in 1933,
Hmm.
and it takes you into this recreated apartment of 1930s of this couple, this Italian
Hmm.
immigrant couple that came to New York, and they had two children, and they lived there for a number of years. And I was interested in that time period. My father came from Germany. Right at World War II around that time, and he came into New York, and so I was very interested in the whole immigrant history, and it's very interesting because this historian and this activist, Ruth Abram and Anita Jacobson, they basically founded this tenement museum, which is in the Lower East Side of New York, and they came upon this rundown building that had been actually closed for 50 years, and it was really dilapidated and basically almost condemned. But they discovered like these belongings and evidence from families that had used these apartments between the 1860s and 1930s, so a
Wow.
big span of time, and over 7,000 people had lived in this building, in this area, during that time. And so they decided to, the items that they found, it became the basis for a museum, so that we can, appreciate and understand the stories of these families whose lives basically shaped our shared
Yeah.
history.
Today. For
So
t
it's
Oh,
it's
I love
it's
that you say shared
fascinating.
history. Yeah, that shared history and understanding because you even see movies where you want to actually see what they were, you want to go
Right.
you want to go into the behind the scenes of that era and that time frame and understand what New York City was like. So this is New York's history as well, the people's history and the immigrants' history. But you're right, it's a shared history that is connects us all. And I find it interesting because you're seeing what they were cooking. You've figuring out what they liked, their likes, what was important to them, their cultural connection to the arts, even.
Right.
So
Right.
I think this is amazing. And, you think about New York City apartments. Now, I know people, I actually know one person who's online, um, and he has with his apartment in New York, and he has his bathtub in the in the kitchen. And he's not the only one who does it because they're so small. So going in there, because when you look at the pictures, the apartments look a little big, but I know, how photography is. Are they small as what I'm talking about with this friend of mine, um, who has a bathtub in his kitchen? Because I know
Yeah,
there's other
they are
people with that.
they're small, and when you go in, you see what they used, whether, it was a household cleanser, laundry starch, but they had the kitchen sink, which was, there, and it served a lot of purposes, not only to wash clothes and wash dishes, but it's where the kids took their sponge baths each morning and had their weekly baths there, and there was also a coin-operated gas meter on the wall, and they would tell you that, this apartment typically rented for about $20, $25 a month back then, and, it was wonderful to get a real flavor and a real taste of what it was like. And, a lot of the families were very close in the building. Their kids would play in the hallways, and, they would really do a lot of sharing and helping each other out. We saw a video that was made when the daughter actually came back to the apartment for the first time since she'd lived there as a child. And, she remembered the place as being really dimly lit. It was kind of barely furnished. It was cold. But, she also said that her mother tried to decorate it with, homemade curtains and coverlets, and they grew flowers, at the window. And so, it was really, and then she was talking about how Italian music and soap operas would play on the radio day and night, and they would play cards, and they would, play with her friend down the hall, and they play at being movie stars, and, all this. It was a real flavor of life then, so I really found it to be fascinating.
Well, it's a community. Apartment complexes are communities.
Yes.
Yes. They are. It's like, I think a lot of sitcoms, look at the Friends based in New York City.
Right.
There's one, right?
Sure.
There you are. Here's the community in the apartment. Even, think about all the sitcoms. Even the Ropers. Come on. Which was it? The Ropers, or is it Three's Company? I can't remember, but remember the Roper. You know who I'm talking about, right? Three's Company, I think it was. If you think about all the sitcoms in life, a lot of them are based in the New York City area, and in that region, right? Or New York City. But a lot of them were apartments, and that's where the characters came out. And if they were dealing with, financial woes or real, maybe it was something going on in the city itself, or, it could be a transit issue, whatever, but it gave you that flavor for the city. So I think this museum is one of those that I would absolutely want on my list of going, but let's go to Broadway. Apparently you like Broadway. You like shows.
Oh my gosh. I can't get enough of it.
Have you been to a Broadway show? Have you been to a Broadway show itself?
Oh my! Many over the years. Yeah.
Oh, so that was a dumb question. Fire monkeys.
Yeah. Every time I would go to New York City, and I started going when I was, I was raised in the Chicago area, and my parents we'd go to New York, and ever since I was a child, I was seeing Broadway shows, and so every time I go to New York City, I have to go see at least one. More than one show.
So New York City is like, if you know Chicago, you can do New York. Right. So you've got that bearings of city life. So you get it. And then going there and doing this throughout. So this is making sense now with all these visits to New York City. So this is like an old friend, the city, it sounds like.
Always. But you know what it's like for me? It's like getting, I don't know, it's like getting this injection of life and
really
vitality whenever I go to New York. It's like I need this injection to be able to go there and get caught up in it, all of the interesting, exciting, fascinating,
So it's energetic.
Bizarre,
it's an energetic
crazy
city. Yeah, energetic.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a friend who moved out of there to California, and every time I talk to her, she's like, "I need to go back to New York. I can't do this. I need to go back." She was in the city. She, lived in the city. And, and think about Sex in the City too. I'm like thinking all this, think about that.
Tons of shows, and I had my younger son lived in New York City for a while. And so, it was a great reason, not that I ever need a reason to go to New York, but I don't, but we used to go, to see him and, go to Broadway and go to museums and do all that kind of stuff and eat our way through the city. But the Broadway Museum it's really interesting that it took this long to to actually have a museum about Broadway,
Yeah.
because it's been, Broadway's been around for, for a long, long time, and so it's, I think it's like, 18th century origins basically to the present. And so, this museum, to me, it was such an exciting thing to realize that they had finally, created this museum based on Broadway. And it really was, past, present, future kind of thing. And, every musical that made any kind of splash was represented. And there was wonderful, wonderful amounts of artifacts and, videos and, playbills and photographs and everything that you can possibly
Wow.
think of, and the costumes. And so, and I think they
Ooh.
highlighted about more than 500 individual productions were highlighted, which is really insane. And, you go from floor to floor to floor, and it's, you could spend several hours because there's so much to read, there's so much to interact with, and it's fabulous. And then, people have their favorites, and, so it to me, it was a delightful experience. And when I go back, I'd like to go again, because I know that I missed,
And
a
there's going to be
lot.
new. It's going to
Yes,
rotate, right? And so like I want to
there'll be
see
more
Wicked.
shows. Yeah,
I want to
yeah.
see the Wicked in there because I want to see like
Uh,
the costumes for that. And I think what you're saying too about the costumes being and actually having a museum. I know because when I was reading your story, I'm like, what do you mean? Like I would have already thought it had been there for
yes,
years, right?
yes, yeah.
And when I was like, wow, okay, well, that's exciting for everyone to know about. Go, go, go.
Right.
But I think when it comes to theater, a lot of times, and in movies, and you also did the Academy out in LA, their
Right.
museum.
Right.
A lot of times because things are so short-lived. Like here's the headline here. If you're watching the Oscars, it's short, or the Tony Awards, real
Yeah.
short.
Yeah.
Very, the music, Grammys, short. All the roots music you can't see on TV. It's like, oh,
Right.
sorry, only these people. And that's about timing, and it just sucks, but it is the way it is. So a museum has that ability to, showcase what the costume designers have done, what the set people have done, whereas a lot of times you don't see that. You can see it in a production, but the focus always ends up on the actors. You know what I
And
mean? And I think
yes,
that's,
yeah, it is truly. And so this museum, which is wonderful, they have a wonderful, spectacular, set of exhibits that is really, it's called The Making of a Broadway Show. And so it pays homage to all of the people, both on stage and off, who bring the play and the musicals to life. And so, they explain about all the different specialists, whether it's, a stagehand or a set designer or a makeup artist or a lighting tech, and even the people that are marketing the shows, So people who are interested in pursuing theater as a career, can also say,
mm,
oh, this is what this person does. I never knew that there was somebody who was doing that, And,
mm.
it is. And I love this one quote that was on the wall, and it said, maybe you struggle to relate to some of the specialized jobs you've heard about in the exhibition, yet you still have a burning passion to work in the theater. Theater has a place for you.
Oh,
And it was such a wonderful, encouraging statement to make, because you can think about young kids and teens and people who are just, who've always thinking, maybe I'd like to work in the theater world, and they're not people who are actors or actors. They want to maybe do something else. Maybe they're just really interested in the whole behind the scenes thing. And here's a great way for them to get, exposure to that.
oh, I love that because it's true. And how many people go from like a small town in the Midwest, drive to LA or New York City with their dreams, like,
Right.
and
Sure.
and it's so hard when they get there, right? It's a
Yeah.
hard road and they know it, but until they get in it, they're like, I don't know until I know. So it's
Absolutely.
it's a really interesting road to be on, but from the musicians and actors that we've interviewed from New York City, from what I have learned from their communication and how they do their projects, right? And productions, it seems
Absolutely.
like there is like a community, a family there that supports each other. in each person's field, whether it be music, theater, um,
Yes, and everybody has a role that they play to make this all come off.
come together.
And
Wow.
you sitting in the audience, anybody sitting in the audience sees this finished production, and they don't realize how much blood, sweat, tears have gone into creating this, and then what's going on behind the scenes while you're watching it on stage, but what's going on behind there. And it's amazing the amount of roles and jobs and duties
Teamwork.
that people have. Oh, it's totally,
Yeah.
it's like,
And in
and
the
like you said, it's,
arts, yeah,
yes,
you have to have ego, right, to get
yeah,
you on stage, but you can't have too much because it's a team. So
it is.
that's what's so hard. It's like it's individualistic and teamwork at the extreme. And
Absolutely.
when it's curtain call, that's it.
Yeah.
Boom. You can't go back. Whatever it is. So I want to talk about the Apollo Theater because that is huge to go
It
to.
is.
I mean,
It is.
Harlem's history of music. Oh my. And
And this
that
and
would
this
be
is
my
Harlem's,
first thing to go
and
to.
this is their most famous historic landmark there. But it's the birthplace of all the careers of so many artists that everybody knows. Whether it's Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday, or whether it's Stevie Wonder, whether it's the Jackson
Hmm.
Five and Marvin Gaye, or even Machine Gun Kelly. This, they say, is where stars are born and legends are made. And there's a wonderful story behind the Apollo. And to guide you is this incredible man named Billy Mitchell, who they refer to as Mr. Apollo. He's their
Oh,
official historian. He's a lifelong legend. He's been with the theater for over 58 years. And
wow.
he is the man. And so he regales you with these wonderful stories, inspiring, entertaining, and you learn about, the different eras in Harlem. And, he's got wonderful backstage memories. He's got fabulous tales. And, he talks about how he got introduced to the Apollo and how James Brown and Marvin Gaye actually took him under their wing and, stressing education, giving him money to further his schooling, and how he went on to work on Wall Street, but he was unhappy on Wall Street, and he eventually quit to go back to the Apollo as all things an usher. Imagine working on Wall Street and then going back to the Apollo as an usher, and he started there again, and then every year opportunities came, and he worked in every different kind of department you can think of in the theater. And he said he did everything from, working in the gift shop and security and marketing and stagehand and sales and, just all these different
Oh,
jobs. And now he is truly the historian, and he
he
is
should write a
the
book.
one of and he is. He wrote a book.
Is
He
he?
did write a book. He wrote a book about it's called
Oh, that's
They
right.
Call Me
Yes,
Call Me Mr.
Mister.
Apollo. It's his autobiography, and he actually was encouraged to do so because he gave Michelle Obama a tour some years ago, and after hearing all of his stories, she told him he needed to write a book, and so he did.
If she says so, do it. Yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yep.
amazing, because
Yeah.
she's got her biography out there too, her memoirs, and then you read
Oh.
about and listen about her story. I mean, she was, she was tutoring Barack,
Yep.
Obama. And so I'm
Absolutely.
just saying out there,
She's
got to give her
she's
some credit. Yeah.
yes, and she, and also there's this wonderful tradition. There's a tree of hope that is
That's
on
what I was going to ask
stage,
about.
and
Yeah.
it's a piece of a tree, a stately elm it was, and it was supposed to be a purported to be a good luck charm to everyone who touched it. And so when the tree was cut down because they widened the street, they took a piece of it and brought it back to the Apollo. And so the stump of the tree sits on a pedestal on the stage, and every entertainer gives it a traditional rub for good luck. It's part of what you do. And if you don't, something possibly could happen. And he was telling us about how Justin Bieber, who performed at the Apollo, refused to touch it because he said he didn't need any luck. And so in the middle of this show, the power ended up going out.
See? Okay. That is, but yeah, but that makes sense. Like you know what I mean? You don't,
Yeah.
it's like you break your legs,
Yep.
that whole saying. Um,
Yeah.
our friend Steve Schneikert, who does our Hollywood history podcast, and He's like, you don't screw with traditions and
No,
rituals.
you don't break
You
those chains, you
never,
know?
you never. I mean, when we hosted our Champagne Sunday show, in fact, it's part of our big weekly blend podcast now because if it is part of our legacy. That's how we started Big Blend Radio was, on Sundays
Right.
having our champagne and toasting to the good stuff in
Right.
life, no matter how bad
Right.
things were. Always look on what's positive. And the times we didn't drink our bubbly, we're like, we don't want people to think, it's like you can drink tea, and that's true. Anytime we didn't drink champagne, something went wrong. A guest didn't show, you know, the radio thing went off, technical issues, and then you don't even have champagne to get you through whatever issue it is. You're just like,
Yeah.
why the
Yeah.
heck didn't I keep with the
Yeah.
champagne tradition? I
Yeah.
swear to everything, anytime Nancy and I did not do the show without bubbles,
Isn't that
it was
interesting?
out. It is,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
there's a energy and a power to that, and I love that story. Now New York City, the public library. This library, I know so many historians talk about this, but this is really like a library that also has like art. It's not just about books, right? This is a little bit of
Oh,
everything in this library.
it
This
is.
is
Yes.
massive. It's
And
massive.
it's a national historic landmark, and if you've ever walked down Fifth Avenue in the city, you can't miss it. It's this, as massive lion statues out front, and you look at it and you think, oh, it's a museum or a courthouse or government offices, but no, it is the Schwartzman Building. It's a very famous building of the New York Public Library, and you can visit the library on your own, but I would highly recommend taking the docent guided tour of the place, because you get so much more, once again, from a guide, and there's such a colorful history here, and it's a free 1 hour tour. And you're in one of the most iconic buildings in the city. It's a premier research center. It's a provider of knowledge, and so everybody comes here with a desire and a need to know. And so, there are millions and millions of books and manuscripts and audio recordings and art and maps and pictures, and it's mind-boggling. And it took 10 years to build the place, which was constructed actually on the site of a former reservoir. And the city donated the land. And then it opened in 1911, and President
Wow.
Taft was there presiding over the dedication of it. And, on that day, 50,000 people went through its doors. And since then, of course, millions and millions have come. But it has been dubbed the People's Palace of Learning because it looks like a palace. It's a very, royal-looking, resplendent, looks like royalty would be there. But they say, it's for the free use of the people.
Wow, and it's huge. And you've got in your article you talk about all these, famous, films and TV shows like Seinfeld. Come on, who
Yeah.
doesn't love Seinfeld, right? And now I can actually see I see it, in my head. Sex in the City, we were talking about that, how could we leave out Seinfeld in the apartments, right? But this is also goes back to immigrant history.
Yes.
Immigrants who were part of all of this. So I find that, just it all ties in everywhere we go. It all ties in
Well,
to
it
people.
also talks about, who were the wealthy families back then in the 19th century, like, Jacob Astor, James Lennox, and those are the people that were the benefactors and founders, and these were the civic leaders. But what I found was interesting, and there's this plaque that is pointed out to you in the major Astor Hall, which is the place where you enter, the heart of the building. And it's this man, and our docent said, have you ever heard of this man named Martin Radke? And we all looked at each other blankly. No, nobody had. And he has his own plaque, and it was a Lithuanian immigrant who used to come into the library to educate himself. And that way he was able to earn a lot of money, and he left his money to the library in gratitude upon his death. So they have honored him with this plaque as a reminder that serving the public is at the core of its purpose.
Oh, I love that. I'm just reading, like, about, you in your article about John Milton, who he's profound, and sometimes I don't even want to quote him we do a quote of the day on social media, and some of it I'm like, oh, we got to do. And then I'm like, dude, some of it is so real. Like people are going to get upset. Like he's amazing, John Milton.
Right.
Um, and I love that he's quoted in there, but also, the fact that there are museum, like crazy things, like the skull of Percy Shelley is in there, parts of his skull, and
I
Winnie
know.
the Pooh
It's
animals,
this is
and
yeah. It's like
Dickens'
the
desk and
library. They
chair,
have
like the
it's the
Declaration of
treasures.
Independence. Like what the heck?
Yeah.
Murals, paintings. You got like, I want to go see the skull. I'm in.
Oh, it's fragments of the skull. Yeah, and they have even the original Winnie the Pooh stuffed animals. They have Charles Dickens' desk and chair. It's like
Yeah.
that's in the library's treasure exhibition, which I found to be fascinating. So it's not only a library; it's a museum, and there's a
Yeah.
whole area where there's portraits and murals and these incredible up on the ceiling. The just amazing. I think one of the major highlights that anybody will tell you about the Schwartzman Building is the Rose Main Reading Room. And this is truly one of those places where you walk in and everybody's mouth just kind of drops, and it is one of the most beautiful spaces. It's definitely a showstopper, and you look up above the doorway, and like you said, there's a John Milton quote, and then you step inside this room, and it's about the length of 2 blocks in the city, and it has these 52-foot tall ceilings with these breathtaking murals of skies and clouds, and it's just it's amazing. And each of the spaces in the library, there's these handsome rooms with gorgeous wood floors and tables and skylights and portraits of George Washington and Washington Irving, and even one of Truman Capote. And people said, well, why is Capote there? And the docent said, well, because the author set an important scene in Breakfast at Tiffany's in the reading room of the library. And so, you're finding out that all these people, these famous people, have, frequented the library. They come and they write there. They come and they do research. They come and they film, whatever it is. So it really is one of these all-encompassing sites. I encourage everybody to check it out.
I want to go now. The High Line. I am excited
Yes.
about this. New York City's High Line, because one of our favorite things to see in life, and our late friend, Jim Ostick, got me hooked on this, is the Rails to Trails program. It's a nonprofit that, works on old railway lines being turned into trails for public use. And I believe the New York City's High Line is actually in their Hall of Fame as being one of the most important ones. And you got to go there. And so this is like a park that has art, but it's like an urban park, which is something we noticed was so important. I know Nancy and I did this community park map. It was at the beginning of COVID, and we did when people could go to the parks. And it was after that first month of when we're all locked in, and we did a community map of all the parks that we'd been to. Like it was over 150 parks or something ridiculous. Within a week, we had over 100,000 views of that map of what
Wow.
these are all urban parks, right? And we realized, wow, that's why we don't just do national parks now. We do all of them. All parks matter on our Love Your Parks tour, right? And so this is a park that I really want to go to because it's like I know that, you've got that really big park in New York City, Central Park, but this seems like another one that is really important for locals and visitors, but it's, looking at health, taking something old and you've got one of the rail to trails, out in Santa Fe where you are, the Rail Yard Park, and watching, we went and did a story on them, and it's amazing what you can do from taking something that is maybe considered a brown space and turning it green. I don't know if this was a brown space, but this seems to be something very popular and an amazing project.
Well, it's built on a historic freight rail line, and it's elevated above the streets. So what it is this incredible, I think it's like 1.5 miles long. And it's pedestrian only. But
Hmm.
what's so interesting about it is because it is elevated, you get this very interesting perspective of the city, of its architecture, of the landscape, of the scenery, and they've done an incredible job with artwork and sculptures and the landscaping and the plants. And it opened. I think the first section opened in 2009, and it's maintained and operated by the Friends of the High Line, which is in partnership with the city's Department of Parks and Recreation. It's a very beloved place for not only locals but for visitors. And it's the fact that it was inspired by this landscape that grew untamed for 25 years after trains stopped running. It was slated. The whole area was slated to be demolished, but thankfully it never was, and it became an incredible public space that they created. And as you walk, you're just you have so much to look at. Not only do you have the whole architecture of these buildings rising up around you, but this world class artwork, and it's just to me it's amazing. I have done the High Line. Pieces of it. I've done the whole thing of it. You can start at
Wow.
different places. You can enter at different access junctures because there are stairs, there are ramps, there are elevators, and there are benches along the way. People just sit and hang out and enjoy, if the weather permits, and there's some food places along the way. But it really is such a different experience to be up above there and to be not walking right down on the blocks on the city, but to have this perspective. So I love it. In fact, every time I go to New York, I try to walk part of the High Line because I think it's just so much fun.
Well, and there's some, like you're saying about being above. Um,
Yeah.
this is not New York City, but in Colorado, in eastern Colorado, there's the wildlife sanctuary that we went to, and it's insanely cool. It's like they have a refuge that is open land that is not where you go. Um, but they have lions and everything out there, actually free ranging. So they're rescues. They
Wow.
rescue animals from zoos. They rescue animals from unfortunate circumstances. And like when we were there at the wildlife sanctuary, when you can go and you see the animals, and they are not a zoo, and this is what makes them different. But you see things like bears that are rescued from a circus. I think it was
Mhm.
Romania, and the bears were addicted to cigarettes because they taught them to
Oh,
smoke for a
jeez.
circus.
Yeah.
But anyway, they wanted the animals to not feel like a zoo. They were like a facility of just a refuge for, and a rescue
Right.
center for these
Right.
animals to live their rest of their life, but they knew they needed this educational component that zoos say they do. And they do in some ways. But they didn't want to be a zoo where you are gawking at animals and making them feel
Right.
uncomfortable. And basically this whole refuge started with a 19-year-old guy rescuing them from zoos in his backyard and trying to help these animals. And it turned into this huge thing. His name is Pat. And they have these animals all rescued from all over the world, from hurricanes, everything.
Wow.
But you don't walk amongst the animals. You are on this trail above the animals. So you're
Mm.
not affecting them. Like if you see an airplane go over,
Right.
it's there, but it's not anything that you're going to have to deal with.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
So they're not feeling like a zoo. They time how many people go through, um, and you get to look down. So no, your photos don't look great, but that's not the point, right? So you get some education. They're very educational.
Sure.
But being
Sure.
above and doing that, number one, you have great views of the
Yeah.
region, but it made you really understand that connection. And there's something to be above on these kind of like when you go on bridges and look down, whether
Yeah. It's
it's water or a
fabulous.
city, it's amazing. But I like what you're saying. I mean, just being able to be up and be able to understand the city and get those views and because it's in Manhattan, right? Yeah,
Oh
Manhattan's
yeah.
West Side.
Of course.
I mean,
Yeah. And
that's
it's
just
it's
amazing.
amazing because when and New York is a city of architecture, which is fascinating too. And there are walking tours and architectural tours, throughout the city. But as you're walking, and you're looking at these different buildings and the way they're, the shapes and their sizes and how they all fit in like little puzzle pieces, and it's just, I don't know, it was just, to me, I think it's one of the most wonderful things that New York has to offer. It's free, just like the tour of the library tour. It's so nice to find things that are free and that you can do at your own leisure, and really truly get a different perspective of the city.
I think that's a good point for families too, because things can add up in a place like New York City. You need a few free things to put in there on your itinerary.
Absolutely.
I think it's a good thing, and outdoors is another thing too. So
it's another thing.
Yeah. Because you think of New York City as being very congested and everything kind of boxed in tiny, but yet you have Central Park, you have places like the Highline, right? So there are these oases throughout the city that people can experience.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very cool. Debbie, Fire Monkey. Next one, we're going to be talking about Samoa, right? American Samoa?
Yes, and the island of Samoa. So there's two Samoas. There's the American Samoa Island, and then there's Samoa itself, which is its own country, so to speak. So so I'm going to go to both, and I will report back.
Are you excited? Because this is a new place for you now.
Absolutely. I'm always excited. And even to go to places I've been, just like New York, it's always exciting to me, because I know that there's always something that I haven't experienced or seen. And that's why, it's fun to return to places that you've been to, because that there's more, always more.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Debbie. Everybody, stay tuned. And like I said, the links to the articles that Debbie's written about all these different New York City experiences are all listed in the show notes. So check it out there, whether you're listening on YouTube or Spotify, check out the show notes. And thank you so much, Debbie. Take care and safe travels.
Oh, thank you so much. And to you as well. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Big Blend Radio's Global Adventures Show with travel writer Debbie Stone. Debbie is here every fourth Tuesday. You can keep up with us at bigblendradio.com.